Chapter 20. Andy's body was returned to the exact location of her passing. It lay in the open field of one of Derek's possible futures. Thick horse's hooves approached and then stopped. From behind the horse and rider, a man in a dark cloak, its hem dragging along the ground, approached a moment later. "Blasted apprentice," Velicious said through gritted teeth. He turned toward the horseman and then sneered. "You taught him well, my brother. His quick thinking just might have saved her life. Well, perhaps that means they'll be looking for her, doesn't it? In which case, I'll have my revenge after all." The horseman began to step down off his steed, but was halted with a derogatory statement from Velicious. "Leave her to rot, you half-wit. It's entirely possible she won't recover." Velicious turned and began walking. The horseman circled around with him. "We have a lot of work to do because of the Everal." "Her companion, the newcomer," Velicious said. "He cost me my dragon. I'll mount his head on a platter. I swear it." A sudden shift in the wind caught his interest. He stopped and turned his attention to the elements. His shrouded face slowly turned back toward Andy, just in time to see a thin, glowing vertical strip of light rip through the air from approximately 60 feet away. 3 well-developed men leapt out of the prismesque crease, each wielding a bow, a blade, and a quiver of arrows, and landing with Andy at their feet. The first 2 wore animal skin vests and loincloths, while the more muscular third opted for the loincloth alone, sporting also a bear-toothed necklace and a whip at his side. Jake, the brawnier and third one out, landed and caught a glimpse of Andy's life-lacking body. He immediately drew his thoughts upon her in the ravine, where he found her nearly 3 years prior. The vow he made in that moment, when he said his farewell to her, sprung into resurging life within him, churning, tearing at the core of his heart. A reason to live, to press on for a better life, suddenly dawned over the darkness of years past. "I'll never leave you again," he murmured. The color-laden rays bursting out from the crease had Velicious gazing in a thrilled yearning. The Atlas. Finally. Realizing Velicious had assembled the Atlas, Garen, the second one out, knew it would respond to Velicious as a higher authority. Velicious drew a fist and the Atlas took action. It closed the crease and hovered as a small sphere just long enough for Garen to dive for it. The Atlas zipped to Velicious directly. At long last, the Atlas. Upon examining it, he realized it was short a ruby. "Blast you," he roared. "Unhand the ruby and I'll spare you a tortuous death." Just then, Jake, who had maintained several characteristics concerning his previous identity as a horseman, quick drew his bow on Velicious. "Hey, remember me? I heard you might be here. I was hoping I didn't miss you. I never did get completely back to myself, but thanks to you and that stinking dragon and his fire, I'm still dead on with a bow." Derek, the first one out, quickly knelt down next to Andy and touched her face. "How could I possibly have forgotten how beautiful you are?" Derek said. Garen joined Derek in tending to Andy. Derek broke his gaze away from Andy for just a second to address Garen. "I owe you my life 1,000 times over, my friend. Thank you." He glanced up at Velicious and scowled. "I mean to finish you this day." "Oh, a hero after all," Velicious said. "This is interesting. The hero has no idea what he has jeopardized for the soul of a wench. Now hand me the ruby." "Mind your tongue, you bastard," Jake said. Derek threw an overly unkind glare at Velicious. "Did he tell you he's a spot-on shot? Take him, Jake." Jake released the arrow. It traveled the air with urgency, narrowing the distance between them instantly, and just as it readied its landing toward Velicious, it burst into splinters under a resounding snap. The horseman, Pradicus, had clutched his whip and cracked it against the arrow upon its arriving. "Oh, you want to play," Jake said. He unraveled his whip and wound it out off to the side. He then went through a demonstration of whip-handling brilliance, snapping and cracking it in various places overhead, behind, and before him. "Let's see what you got," he said, approaching Pradicus. Without hesitation, the horse progressed forward upon Pradicus's prompting. Pradicus then dismounted. He advanced toward Jake with purpose, like a determined lioness upon a fawn. He cast his whip forward and back, performing a series of exhibitionary snaking maneuvers, then threw in a crack at the end. He stopped and waited for Jake to engage. Jake stepped toward him and then started a dead sprint, which quickly transformed into a smooth display of zigs, zags, and rotations, all the while controlling the whip effortlessly. A symphony of sounds split the air in streaking howls and swooshes. In the middle of his performance, he rotated a quarter turn toward Pradicus and unleashed a wailed lashing upon his face. His cheek split instantly and a splash of blood sprayed out. Pradicus responded with a lightning-quick snapping back that Jake evaded with a half-tuck and spin, which culminated with another crack across Pradicus's face, presenting another laceration, this time above the forehead. Pradicus continued as if unaware of his thrashing. He started in on a series of fantastic whacks, one after the other, all landing absently where Jake had just been a split second before, until smack, Jake took one on the back between the shoulder blades, and he unleashed a scream of pain. Jake stopped and threw Pradicus a look of determination. Okay, no more toying. He winced, gritting his teeth, and then tossed Felicius an evil squint. After I'm done with him, I'm coming for you. Felicius returned the threat with a barely discernible grin. Jake began his attack, winding his whip in several serpentine weaves while circling Pradicus halfway around. He cut in, evaded a lashing, and then turned and delivered 4 more strikes in succession, each in a fleshy part of the face. He then rolled and stepped within an arm's reach of Pradicus, pulled a blade from Pradicus's sheath, ducked, and spun around behind him, landing the blade in the upper right quadrant of Pradicus's back, which had little effect on the horseman being a solitary incision. Jake tumbled to the ground, cast his whip around the one Pradicus held, and yanked it out of his grasp. Jake then wielded both whips in an impossible display of half-turns and revolutions, back and forth, cracking them in an amazing, concerted effort. He turned his attention to Pradicus, who stepped to his horse and withdrew the metallic-looking whip. He unraveled it and then cast it toward Jake, who either stepped out of its way or blocked his opponent's efforts with one whip and landed another lacerating whack with the other. Finally, Jake started closing his distance from Pradicus, bearing both whips, neither out of sync with the other, and then, with one valiant effort, cast one lashing around Pradicus's neck. It wrapped around like a python. In a one-handed cartwheel, landing him once more within arm's reach in front of Pradicus, Jake spun around behind him again and pulled the slack. His strength, still considerable, had the horseman on his toes, reaching and clawing with his hands. "Yield!" Jake yelled. "Yield!" While pressing his chest against Pradicus's backside, Jake's shoulder took on a vague illumination where the blue arrow had struck him. The light spread to Pradicus, who, suddenly and for only a second or two at a time thereafter, had strangely experienced freedom from the snare of the horseman's curse. Lucid moments of clarity returned to Pradicus, the man, only to be overpowered by the inner wrestling. A great battle for the control for his mind was underway, like 2 mythical titans vying for a peak's highest ground. As the horseman resurfaced within his eyes, he drew the longest blade he had access to, positioning it merely inches from Jake's ribcage, preparing a hearty thrust. Just then, the man Pradicus emerged again, having a mere solitary moment to survey and act. While realizing he was moments from his own suffocating death if he did nothing, his eyes inadvertently fell on Andy. A horrified expression swept his face, and he gasped, "Andy." Awareness suddenly set in, and he was able to see what a gift she was to him. In the darkness which was his world, a light had been sent to show him the way. And it was anger, perhaps his own anger, which ultimately eclipsed her brightness, leading her to this end. Every good, noble, and caring deed she had offered him abruptly rushed to the forefront of his mind. Memories of her character, her quickness to forgive, the kindness she showed despite her circumstance, patience in the midst of difficulty, a fresh, "I'll be praying for you." and the way she ended almost every prayer with, "And kind Father, it's your kindness which leads me to repentance," nearly every day flooded his mind's eye. Her prayers finally had taken root and begun springing up everywhere within the arid land which knew no savior, his innermost being. In an instant, it was made known to him, the love of a loving God. He smiled just slightly and spoke his first words to a God he only knew through the eyes of one incredible girl. The words simply leapt out from within him. "Kind Father, your kindness leads me to repentance." He raised his eyes to the sky and found himself remorseful for a life full of anger. Lacking the ability to understand his heartfelt change, he uttered the words, "Jesus, God of gods, Savior of souls, I choose your love in place of my anger. Save me." Without a moment's hesitation, he experienced a freedom he'd never known or could have imagined after a life of shackles. He gathered a breath, his first truly fresh breath of freedom. But just as quickly as he gained comprehension of his newfound liberty, the monster within him began taking over again. He fought a desperate internal battle to keep hold of his mind and take back his life, all the while ensuring no harm came to Jake. A depth awoke within him he hadn't before been aware of, a reach which extended to his eternal core. An epiphany jolted him, one which acknowledged that the struggle had not only taken place for dominion of his mind, but much more importantly, ownership of his everlasting soul. A battle. Why is it I never saw this before? As understanding began to flow, he found himself drawing upon the threshold of a whole new concept: significance. His eyes shot back and forth across the ground, attempting to rationalize the wondrous rush he was experiencing, while purpose started its unfolding like a blossoming rose. "I was meant for something," he whispered. Marveling at the recent discovery, yet powerless to truly grasp the revelations rolling in wave after wave, he abandoned carnal reason and simply embraced the new, fresh way of thinking, of living. He felt liberated, new somehow, as if nothing he did previous to that very moment bore any weight in his value. What lay ahead was all that mattered. How he viewed his life had completely changed, and all in the blink of an eye. So who was he now? A discernment arose within him, one in which he felt the essence of his entire person, newfound identity and eternal worth, highly sought after by two clashing kingdoms. In his estimation, this discernment revealed that the battle had been lifelong, going on without his knowledge from his first breath, and had ensued for the claiming of his very soul. He mouthed a few silent words, holding his gaze on Andy. With what dwindling sliver of his mind he'd clung to, he found the alertness to surrender the blade, dropping it to the ground, just as all that remained of the man Pradicus was seized by the more physically dominant monster. Pradicus, the horseman, once again fully in command, immediately began implementing a plan on the fly to rid himself of Jake, and following close behind, the annoying presence, which, for several seconds, had unseated him. Within seconds, however, and without warning or explanation, the more than capable horseman within Pradicus found himself suddenly fighting for control of Pradicus once again. The mind of the horseman attempted to draw power from the curse, demanding it be recognized. A desperate, violent flailing followed, as the life which the horseman claimed rights to was systematically removed from his control, as something holy and far greater asserted its will. The battle was over swiftly, like a rowboat waging war with a battleship. In the time it took Pradicus to merely open his eyes, it was finished. The curse was defeated, and Pradicus stood silently, completely free. Garen looked up. A feeble breath fell on his lips as surprise swept his face. "Pradicus." Jake understood the flailing as opposition. "I said yield." He gave Valicious another squint and then yanked violently, breaking Pradicus's neck. "Jake, no!" Garen screamed. Pradicus's body fell limply to the ground. Garen's eyes darted toward Derek, who stared on, traumatized. This wasn't the way I saw it, Garin murmured. His eyes rose slowly, filling with tears, until he was gazing just above the horizon, trying to decide between gladness and regret. He then said something Derek didn't understand at all. It was just the 4 simple words. Yes, I heard him. Derek spoke out loudly to Garin. Pradicus was already gone, right? There was no chance for him to come back like Jake did, right? He laid his face into his hands and sighed. Garin, this is all wrong. We were just supposed to grab her and go. What happened? He peered out of the slits between his fingers and stole a look at Andy. What are we going to tell her? Garin despondently lowered his eyes. The concerned frown he wore for Pradicus quickly evolved into a deeper concern for Andy. We've got to do something for her. She has a light pulse, but she won't make it long, and the gate is closed. Derek lifted his face, shaking his head. If Andy were able, she'd summon those glimmery guys. Where are they now? Derek, she didn't summon anyone. She connected with God while she was here waiting for you. She lost her way and reached out. Jesus was waiting and reached back. He's the one who sent the glimmery guys to fulfill his purpose. God will stand by and let you walk out your plans your way, but he'd rather help you. The guys you're talking about serve a function. Their assignments are part of a higher mission. They aren't permitted to help as they see fit. It would interfere with his mission. God's help is available, but in a sense, his hands are tied until you ask for it. She knew how to ask for it. God's paths are already formed. It may be a difficult trail, but be assured, he provides where he guides. And with God, there is the assurance of hope. Let these words churn within you, Derek. With hope on God, on Jesus, there's always a promise just around the corner. Garin's last few words resonated within Derek. He thought back to what Andy said about hope. His eyes drifted away from Garin, then back toward him, and then away again. It began to make sense, but the second he entered into a critical assessment, the idea evaporated. Like an illusion, he snapped back into his rigid thinking. God can keep his hope. I'm not asking him for any help. He screwed up my life by letting all this happen. Where was he for the last 2.5 years? I could have used his help to get here sooner, Garin. He has nothing to offer me. It's about surrender, Derek. It sounds like you're not ready. You, my stubborn friend, won't see his help as valuable until you come to the end of yourself. You don't think this is me being at the end of myself? No. You're still trying to do it your way. Derek clinched his teeth and retorted. You think this is my way? Fine, I'm at the end of my road. My toes are hanging off the ledge here, Garin. Garin answered in a soft but firm tone. It's your way until you're willing to step off the ledge. Well, why don't you call those guys down? Don't you have some kind of relationship with them? I mean, you're an Everil, right? You must have been able to connect with God after all these years. First of all, Everils aren't special. They don't illuminate or fly or appear out of nowhere. And secondly, they're just humans like you. And they don't have any different connection to God than you or anyone else. Suddenly, Andy flinched. Both their eyes rushed to her. Call on them, Garin, Derek said. We need their help. I can't. Garin, do it, please. There's more you don't know, Derek. It's impossible, but you can. Derek, step off the ledge. The time is now. Surrender. No, we're doing this my way. I've always managed on my own. He pursed his lips, thinking. He spun back around to Jake and Velicious. Garin held his gaze on Derek for a lengthy moment. Very well, he said under his breath. He then returned his eyes to Andy. Looking down at his lifeless brother, void of concern, Velicious chuckled wickedly and then refocused his attention on Jake. He reached into his garments and palmed Visaduro, a ball of dragonfire, from a pocket, then surreptitiously dropped it to the ground behind him. He placed a heel over the radiant orb and then quietly crushed it. The fire penetrated the soil of the earth, combusting beneath the surface. It produced a nearly unnoticeable detonation radius, which reached Jake almost instantly. Jake responded with a sudden loss of equilibrium, which he promptly recovered from, but The Visaduro had already begun its act of reclamation. The poison of revenge, venom of fury, and a myriad of other toxins made their reintroductions from whence they were cast 2.5 years ago in the cavern. Like blood to a vampire, Jake nearly fell drunk, drinking them in. Very nice, young one. Such talent. You served me well. I am not slow when it comes to selecting my guardians, but the day is far from over. Did you think for 1 second that I would not have come prepared for such an end as this? Indeed, you served me well, and shall again, before the day is over. You vile slug. I'll die before I serve you again, Jake said, jumping toward Velicious in radiating confidence. A small snicker crept out Velicious' reptilian mouth. I'm sorry, that option is not available. I'm afraid you have no choice in the matter, he said bluntly. We'll just see about that, won't we? Jake started marching toward Velicious, who drew out a whip from his garments. He let it unfold to the ground, and when it did, it took on an electrical charge. Your rage, its fragrance is enchanting. Use it. It shall bring you strength. Feeling more empowered by the minute, Jake swooped an arm down and snatched up Pradicus's metallic whip. Count on it. Jake, Garen called frantically, don't listen to him. The rage is a trap. Keep your thoughts focused. Anchor them on something good. Jake held knives in his eyes for Velicious. He made a fist and threw it violently. He's nearly killed the only girl I've ever loved. I mean her to be mine, once again. Derek attentively looked up with a glower. A moment later, he peeked at Garen and then lowered his eyes back down upon Andy's pale face. He brushed his fingers across her lips and then swept her hand up into his palm. Come on, Andy. We've only been gone a moment. Stay with me. It's you and me forever, he said, trying to gauge Jake's last comment. Garen met Derek's momentary glance, then shot his eyes back to Jake. You must not let your focus come from anger, Jake. Derek contemplated the remark. Maybe that wouldn't be so bad for a few minutes. We need a diversion. No, Derek, for him it very well could entail death. He must not give in. What do you mean? We need Jake to distract Velicious. And, of course, I'll be needing the ruby. I know how not to get caught. Garen reached into a pocket and then held it out. Derek swiped it off his palm, then leaned down and kissed Andy ever so softly on the cheek. Just another few minutes, I promise. He stepped away, recoiled, and then bent back down. He cupped her chin and kissed her square on the mouth. Sorry, I've waited a long time for that. He stroked her cheek and then slinked away. Jake rotated just enough to catch a glimpse of Derek pulling away from Andy's face the first time. Conflict arose within him as he witnessed the kiss. That should be me tending to her, not him. Who does he think he is? She's not up for the taking. She loves me. I saw it in her eyes several times. He thinks he's going to steal her from me. How did I not see it? It's all been a ploy to take her from right under my nose. A spark of scorn ignited an inferno of rage. Jake turned away and sized up Velicious, who now stood solely as an obstacle easily eradicated after the elimination of Pradicus. Velicious witnessed the transition within Jake's eyes. He caught scent of the fumes of Jake's fury and then beamed. Yes, take it, he said in his most persuasive tone. It's time to take what is yours. You deserve it. I'm part of your pain. I nearly killed the girl. I'd do it again and succeed and then leave her to rot. Feed her flesh to the birds. Circling Velicious methodically, Jake heaved heavy breaths, imagining Velicious's death and planning how he was going to do it. They, Velicious said, pointing toward Garen and where he thought Derek was, are your misery. I am your affliction. Come, valiant warrior, and kill me, then seize what belongs to you. He leaned toward Jake and raised a fist. To the victor go the spoils. This is your moment. It is your reckoning. Scarcely able to control his seething, Jake grinded out a sentence through his gnashed teeth. I'll never forgive you for her suffering, and if you run from me today, I'll hunt you till you meet the brunt of my blade. Velicious replied with a quiet laugh. Jake, having amassed a plan, suddenly ran forward and then stepped into a winding, twisting advancement. Through acts of calculated finesse, he wielded both whips again in a ballet of air-piercing whooshes. At just the right moment, he brought the metallic whip down with urgency, which Velicious blocked with his own. Sparks, accompanied by a flash of light, exploded, igniting a charge to Jake's metallic whip. Velicious returned with a brilliant maneuver of his own, and the two danced in fatal eloquence, intercepting one another's snaps and cracks, all the while stepping aside from ones they didn't. The clash elicited a stunning display of flashing and bursting light likened to a fireworks presentation. Jake then began another circling forward progression. After his third rotation, he sent a lashing down that broke the air with a fantastic whoosh. Velicious readily intercepted it in a defensive execution. With a powerful jerk, he snatched Jake's whip from him. He then cracked his whip like lightning across Jake's back, then with a sidearm casting robbed him of his other whip. He struck it again against Jake's chest and then sent a sweltering lashing upon his abdomen. Jake dropped to the ground, reeling in a searing blaze of pain. Refusing to surrender, he stood to his feet, doing his best to separate his determination from the torment. He reached down and unraveled the whip from Pradicus's neck. Stammering toward Velicious, he laid out its length in full, weaving it back and forth. His shoulder began to radiate once again, then suddenly flashed out from the piercing. In that moment, Jake had sudden clarity. Comprehension of what he'd allowed to happen to himself seized him. His face, emanating remorse, fell into despondency. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught Derek placing the ruby back into the atlas. It instantly expanded into a whirlwind time gate. Velicious twirled around in outrage. Realizing he only had seconds to act, he turned and threw a whip around Jake's leg and jerked him off his feet. He then headed straightway for the atlas. Derek sprinted back to Andy and positioned himself in order to hoist her onto his shoulder when Jake cried out a heart-wrenching plea. Derek paused and then looked up. Velicious was about to enter the atlas, dragging behind him a pleading, defeated Jake. Derek, please help me. I can't go back. It's taking control of me, Derek. Please do something. If he takes me, I'll never see her again. You and I will never talk again. We've become friends, Derek. You're the brother I never had. Please help me. It's so lonely, so empty. I can't go back with him. Derek stood then, drew his bow. Velicious stopped and glanced at Derek. How interesting. Our hero thinks himself an actual hero at heart. Go ahead and shoot, boy. I fall into the atlas, it collapses behind me, and your ragdoll dies. You save the ragdoll, then the warrior here is my trophy. It seems our hero finds himself on the brink of a tragic moral choice. This is laughable. Wait, Derek said. He glanced at Garen, then at Andy. Take me. I can lead you to the dragon. We resurrected Lignordre. We had to in order to get back here. Silence fell powerfully. Staring seemingly through Derek, Velicious considered the veracity of such a statement. Don't insult me, boy. He drew out another Visaduro out of his cloak and tossed it at Derek. It exploded, knocking Derek off his feet. The impact of Visaduro had Derek fighting consciousness for several minutes. Garen held a contemptuous glare at Velicious. Come on already, he said beneath his breath. He closed his eyes for but a moment, then opened them with a renewed fierceness. Thank you. It shall be done according to thy will, my lord, he said, then stepped forward empty-handed. You dare challenge me, Everall? Dare? Oh yes, I dare, and this victory belongs to the Lord. He immediately burst into illumination and approached Velicious. What trickery is this? You're no Everall. Curse you! Velicious shrieked, cracking his whip onto Garen. Garen waved off the strike and then gestured for the whip to be thrown aside, and it was instantly. I'm not permitted to destroy you until the appointed time, but you are defeated. You forget your place, Illuminated One. I can destroy as I see fit, and without permission. And let us not forget, The Atlas affords me such a luxury. He raised his arms and then, in a clenched fist, heaved a deep, bellowing voice into the Atlas.
Arise, Lignordre!
Instantly the gate expanded, and the great Lignordre exploded out from it. Velicious reached for his whip and then closed his fist as if stealing it out of midair. The whip leapt into life from its place and cast itself to its summoner. Velicious then cast it toward Lignordre, wrapping it around its neck. He was snatched away immediately, positioning himself upon its shoulders at the base of its neck. A much younger Lignordre than was previously killed by the Kraken sprung high, then circled back around and blasted a blanket of fire upon the lot of those on the ground. Garen extended his arms and then raised them to heaven. Holy Lord of all, Jesus, grant me protection for them. A splendid crystal dome or hemisphere appeared over all of them. When the fire ceased, Velicious surveyed the toll from the air. To his alarm, he found no illuminated being, no Andy, Derek, Jake, or Pradikosen. To his outrage, no Atlas. "Curse you!" he yelled. He took the dragon up high into the sky, then using its fire created a wormhole and vanished into it. The end.
Hey everyone, this is Brian Openhour. I hope you really enjoyed The Dark Behind the Door. God bless every one of you.